Hi everybody, and welcome to part 2 of Raw, Real, and Right Now with my really good friend Candace Newton-Chaplet, and I'm Katerina Berger, and we're just here for part 2, and we're really excited about this next part of our journey, and we're going to be talking about boundaries again, because I think boundaries is going to be kind of an ongoing theme in this segment, and we're going to be talking about domestic violence, verbal violence, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So really covering the gamut of
Emotional abuse to physical abuse. It's like there's so many different various nuances that go along with that, and we want to talk about that to you today.
So let's start with the heavy stuff and move back.
Yeah,
so that by the end of this you feel lighter.
Yeah. This is perfect.
So I have a wonderful friend. Her name is Kamel Dillon. She wrote this book called Black and Blue Sorry. And that's not S-O-R-R-Y, that's S-A-R-I. And it's an incredible, true story of a woman who was in an arranged marriage, a South Asian woman, and experienced untold violence. And the picture on the cover of this book is actually her standing in the place where she almost lost her life. And it's a story of victory in the end and forgiveness. And but I'm going to address the sort of issue on domestic violence from my point of view. So growing up, I witnessed domestic violence. So all the stats that talk about children who witness domestic violence, you're looking at me. So I'm that person. I left home at 12 to get away from the dysfunction that was there. But unfortunately, what I didn't realize is I can leave Egypt, but Egypt's still in me.
That's right.
I can get away from it, but the learned behaviors, the things that I witnessed and identified with, were still in me. The coping mechanisms, I got to a certain point where when I would see a behavior in a relationship towards me, I didn't know what to do, so I acted out the same behaviors. I got married quite young when I was 23, and I wasn't established in my boundaries and who I was, nothing.
Right.
So my preconceived ideas about relationships were just such a mess. And I can tell you that as a woman, I didn't handle myself with my husband in the way that I ought to have. Now, he had issues with his boundaries because he had his own dysfunction and how he was raised in what I thought was a better environment than me, but it was different. It shifted differently. So I acted out, he acted differently. And I can't say I was really proud of the way that I behaved. I did a lot of things over my lifetime that I would rather have chosen differently,
Right.
but I'm learning,
Okay.
and I've learned. So as a child witnessing domestic violence, the biggest danger, other than the physical environment, is that a child will look at the parents that they trust and say, what are you doing? I go to school, and if I was to treat one of my schoolmates that like the way mom and dad are treating each other, I would actually get in trouble. Yeah. And I would be called into the principal's office, and then I would be told about bullying, and I would have this big conversation and probably have a consequence. Imagine your children and the confusion they feel, and I know I'm guilty of this as a mother too in presenting this kind of behavior in front of my kids. But imagine that confusion. That child has just gotten in trouble for behaving or acting out at school, and they're coming home and they're watching mom and dad do that to each other. And so it's not to condemn you or to judge you or to fault you. It's to say we can maneuver and learn our way out of this in a really super healthy way. And then I just want to bring up that men can also experience domestic violence. It's not just a woman's issue. Right. Now, the statistics are for sure that women, on the most part, are the ones who are the receiving end for the bulk part. And seriously, women have been murdered and killed and lost their lives, and children have been murdered and killed. We hear all that, and it's devastating. But it doesn't mean that men are excluded from that. And there are situations where women will lose their stuff on a guy so bad, they'll attack him. Scratch him, hit him, kick him, fight, whatever. They throw something at him, And a guy who's a true gentleman, who's truly a good, kind man, will not hit back. And he will close down as a way to protect himself. And that woman perceives that as weakness. That's right. And she'll judge it. So, in having a conversation, if you're in that situation right now and you're a man listening or you know of someone, the best thing to do is say to your friend or that person, look, you look at that person who's acting out and you say, if you're a man, you say to the woman, listen, I know that you're frustrated and I know you're trying to get your message across, but this is not respectful and it's not the right way. If you can't control yourself, and we can't find a way to do this that's dignified, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call 911, and I'm going to ask a police officer to come and help assist in the process of us figuring this out in dignity and respect. Now, I said this to a guy once, and he looked right at me. He said, "Are you kidding?" She would completely stop. Because, but that's the same when you bring in a third party. Right? So addressing all of that, talk to me about, in general, what is an overall general principle, whether it's the seriousness of death and seriousness in domestic violence, or the tiny little things that have been identified as violations to ourselves and others. Give us the whole gamut of boundaries and what that really means, because I bet you there's some woman or a man listening right now going, I've got a boundary. I'm never going to let that person near me again. That is not a boundary. Just want you to know that's as toxic and dysfunctional. All you did was switch roles.
Yeah. So healthy boundaries in this kind of situation are really, really important. And sometimes it's tough to do that. When you're in the middle of it, it's too late. You have to be setting those healthy boundaries well ahead of time. The other
Like
thing,
with a plan.
absolutely,
Of a plan of how I'm going to behave when
right.
this situation happens.
That's right. So always a plan of how I'm going to behave, but not only of how I'm going to behave, but it's a healthy boundary that kind of resonates with your entire core, your entire being, where you know that that is right for me. This is what feels right for me. And if it doesn't feel right for me, then this is where I'm going to put the line in the sand. And if you cross that line, then I have to say, I'm sorry, I value myself too much. I know what I need and I know what I want, and this is not working for me. And that's tough. You know, some people might need more than a life coach. They might need a counselor or a psychologist to get through this stuff.
Or police protection.
Or police protection. The other thing I wanted to address here is the fact that there isn't just domestic violence, which is the biggest one, the physical abuse. Verbal abuse and emotional abuse won't leave the scars, the physical scars, but it will leave the emotional scars. And that is just as bad as what we're talking about here today. One of the examples that I want to give is of a young man that I saw one day beating up on his child. And I had to stop the two of them. I had to physically stop the two of them and say, okay, stop it, or I will be calling 911. And then afterwards, you know, when they all calmed down, I said, why did you do that? Why would you ever do such a thing? And he said, well, that's what my parents did. So that's what I've been taught to do. That's what I'm doing. And that's the way it's going to be.
And he didn't question it.
And he didn't question it because that's what he was modeled in his world. So what Candace is saying here is very key. We need to start at the very beginning and start teaching our children, our spouses, our friends, our lovers, how to behave with each other at the very beginning. We need to have those healthy boundaries within ourselves. And what do you think those children are going to grow up to be like? They'll grow up to be those monsters that were modeled to you in your home.
It's so true. And, you know, on a practical level, let's just do a little exercise. So we're in a relationship. You and I are, let's say, in a relationship, because there's all kinds of relationships out there, and we all have our own partners. But for the sake of this, we're in a relationship. And let's say we're even in a friendship, you know, and I feel that there's something that you are saying or doing that's hurtful to me. It takes big courage, first of all. That's the first component I think we need is courage. And I mean, nobody does this without shaking or thinking they're going to lose a friendship or they're going to hurt someone or disappoint them or, you know, cry. I'm going to cry if I say something. But to look at someone in that moment and just say, Kat, that really hurt me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your intentions were and I don't want to judge them. But right now, I need to step back. That was just like really hurtful. Can I call you later or can we revisit this later on? And you physically get up and go, and you know, your tears are pouring down your face. You walk out the car and you're just like, I have to be true to that authentic self inside of me right now. And it's not judgment. And then for your role, what would your role be? Of course, now you're worried that I think that you did it on purpose. Would be a natural...
The natural response would probably be, I'm not in these situations, but the natural response would probably be, okay, I'm worried about what she's saying here. I don't believe her in the first place. And I'm still rerunning the tapes in my head of what the past was.
So you don't believe that
Don't believe it.
Yeah, I didn't hurt her.
Nope.
She's just making that stuff up.
Exactly.
Right.
So the other thing
here's
another thing I wanted to mention is around the I feel messages. So important. As we all know, it takes 21 days to change a habit. And so when we are approaching somebody who's been abusive towards us in any way, shape, or form, sometimes we like to put the blame on them. We like to make them the heavy. When we come with I feel messages, it makes a huge difference, but we need to practice them. You have to be consistent with the positives. You have to be consistent in trying to turn this stuff around. If you aren't consistent, nothing's ever going to change. Because that person is still coming from that place, oh, this is what she's like. This is what I can do to her. Or this is what he's like. This is what I can do to him. When you change consistently, and it might take some time, then it becomes more of, okay, this is new. I'm not used to this. I don't like it. And then it becomes more of, okay, I think I see where she's going. He's going with that. So when I coach my clients on this stuff, it's I feel disappointed about blah, 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 whatever. I don't want to feel that feeling anymore. What can you and I do together to fix this? And the reason for doing it that way is because you're not putting the blame on the other person. I don't want to feel this way anymore. And what can we do together? Or what can you help me with to understand how this works?
And that is just like, it's just taking your power back and its ownership.
Absolutely. It's absolutely.
Yeah, and I can give you a real example. I had someone come to me many years ago saying, Candace, I need some help. My significant other and I are having battles going on in the relationship. And, we hit each other. And I went, wow. Okay. Well, the fact that you're hitting each other calls it an even playing field. So there's not like a power, one more power than the other. But I said, that's like really, you want to get to a place where that's no longer a part of your life. And I said to this individual, I said, I think you owe your partner an apology. I think that this girl almost punched me in the face, right? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's exactly what he's going to say. She's wrong, and that's why this is happening.
Yeah.
And I said, no, just give me a minute. And so I said, look, you need to ask him, can I sit down and chat with you sometime when you have a few minutes? And ladies with guys, you need to sort of set them up like that. Let them know that it might be coming, that it's going to be okay. It's going to last about 15 minutes, and it could be when they're ready. So you have to give them like, can I meet you tomorrow at 6 o'clock? Would that be a good time? Okay. Because if you go, we're going to talk about it right now, he's just going to, well, it's not going to happen. So I said, plan it. Ask him, I'd like to share something with you that's really important. Can we sit down and chat when you're ready? And he surprisingly wanted to say, like, right now, let's do this right now. Because, guys are insecure too, and they don't know what's coming. So she sat down. She said, I need to ask for your forgiveness. She said, my behavior has given you the message that I don't respect myself.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I do respect myself. So I want you to know, starting from this moment on, I am going to start respecting myself. Will you forgive me? She looked at me when I told her that. She said, he is going to crap his pants. Literally. Because it's not that he was a bad guy, but suddenly she shifted everything.
Right.
She took it away from him and said, you can be whoever you want to be because you are a human, you're of great value, but I'm going to be a different human being.
Yeah.
You can either catch up and join me and go, hey, I want to be part of this new way of relating, or it's like, you're in that job and I don't want anything to do with you.
Exactly right. And then move on, move forward. Know that when somebody leaves your life like that, it's perfectly okay because they weren't meant to be there in the first place.
Now, I coined this little phrase this morning while I was getting ready, and I don't know why it came into my brain. I guess as an educator, I'm always thinking things. Layered learning. This concept came to me this morning called layered learning. So I'm like, what is layered learning? Well, it's like an onion. You start off the tiniest little seed and you begin to grow and grow and grow. Statistics say that it'll take a woman several attempts before she actually leaves a domestic violence situation. And if that is how long she takes to leave a physically threatening environment, how long can she stay in a dysfunctional, or he, in a dysfunctional emotional relationship, which has less immediate consequence and less impact? People live their life for years.
And part of the reason for that is because even though it's not a safe place, it's the safe story, because that's the story that you've built your life around. So that becomes your safe place. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you know what's interesting? Years ago, I was called into a domestic violence situation to ask to help out. I was ripped out of my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, so that made me grumpy immediately. And I'm not a very big person. Well, I'm getting wider this way, but this hasn't gone. And I was just irritated. I thought, I don't want to get out of bed and have to deal with this because this is a repetitive, ongoing situation. Anyways, that sort of spurred me to have some extra courage. Got into the house, looked at the 6'2" husband and said, sit down, I'll deal with you in a minute. And and he was just like so shocked that a woman would talk to him like that. He just sat. Now, I don't always recommend that. So I want you to know that I'm aware that there are situations that are extremely dangerous. And if a man is threatened to kill you, has weapons, guns, you can't take this approach. So I just want you to know that.
That's right.
But in this situation, I had discerned prior. I knew prior who these people were. I went in to make sure that the wife was safe, and I basically counseled her that her job is to try to gain safety for her own children, and that if she didn't intervene, resources would intervene on her behalf and protect her children. And then I went out and I put a chair across from the husband, who was still in a state of shock, and I looked him eyeball to eyeball and I said, "What were you thinking?" And he looked straight at me and he said the most profound thing ever. He said, "Candace, if she behaved the way you behave, I would never hit her." And I looked at him and I said, "Buddy, do you know what you've just done?" And he said, "What?" I said, "You just told me who you were."
That's right.
"You just told me who you were." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm going to hold up a mirror. You told me that it's perfectly okay for you to take advantage of someone who's weak, who doesn't have self-esteem and doesn't know better." And I said, "That tells me everything about you and nothing about her." And then I said to him, "You don't have to worry about her calling the police, because I'll do it." And you know, it worked in that situation, but more than that, we now have laws.
Yes.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And those laws basically assist women in not having to make the decision, or the male of having to make the decision.
Exactly, yeah.
If a police officer, which you're really supportive, you've got lots of support around
Right.
police officers, if they come into a domestic violence situation now, they determine that there's been evidence of violence, they press the charges.
That's right. They do.
And that means both of you have to smarten up, because you take it right out of your hands, right?
exactly.
So our conclusion of our message is really, in this raw, real, and right now moment, we're saying it's possible to restore the authenticity of real love for self and others.
That's right.
That it's really not about male to female, it's about human to human.
That's right.
As humans, we have to learn. I had to learn how to be a human being over the years, and learn how to not street fight, which I was a street fighter. I had to learn not to street fight. I had to learn to find my own dignity first.
Absolutely.
Then I could offer it
Yeah.
to other people.
Absolutely right on.
So in your coaching, in conclusion, what could you offer a woman who's listening right now, or even a man who's listening right now, and they're saying, "I'm so confused. I don't even know where to start. All I know is that I'm so miserable." What could you offer them in your services, Kat?
First of all, you're not alone. Second of all, baby steps are what are going to get you there. Absolutely, one step at a time. And if you do the cha-cha and you fall backwards a little time, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We're all here to learn. We're all here to get those lessons. And, you know, my coaching program is what it is. You know, it's an amazing tool to help you get there. So those are the 3 tips I would give you. You're not alone. That's number 1. Reach out to somebody, anybody that can help you. Baby steps. And don't worry about doing the cha-cha.
See you next time on Raw, Real, and Right Now.